All righty. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight on our Friday night Bible study. We're excited that you're with us. We have a good program. Lately, we've been going over the miracles of Christ, but tonight we're going to take a break from that. We have a special presentation with a special world famous guest speaker, and we're going to be introducing him in a little while to you. But just want to remind you that here at our program, it's kind of a family that is reaching out over the internet to just touch each other and give everybody a hug. And if you have a special prayer request tonight, feel free to type it into the chat, either on YouTube or on Zoom, and we'll be happy to pray about that. And actually, why don't we just have opening prayer right now? Let's bow our heads. Dear God in heaven, we just want to thank you for all your blessings. In the Bible, it says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. And so, God, we come now on your holy Sabbath day, thanking you for helping us make it through the last 6 days. Some of us have had a good 6 days. Other ones of us have had a not so good 6 days, but we just stop here on Sabbath to just say, wow, what a great opportunity to just worship you and to learn more about your word tonight. I pray that you would bless each person that's listening online. I pray that you would bless our speaker, the presenters, the music, and may each one of us just have a spiritual Sabbath blessing. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
This time, Veronica is going to lead our discussion. Veronica, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Pastor Mar. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. So today's topic is going to be related to either traveling or a trip, since we're going to be seeing some pictures from different parts of the world in a little bit. So my question is, if you can tell us of a place you've been to, it could either be outside of the U.S. or in the U.S. where you saw God's blessing. So, when we travel, a lot of the times it's for vacation, for fun. But, if you were able to experience or a mission trip where you were able to do some work for God, I wanted to hear those stories. So I think for me, one trip that I remember a lot is I went to Taiwan one time. I did not know the language or anything. I don't even know how I went. So it was a little harder because I didn't know the language, of course. And, I saw God's blessing because in every situation when I did not know how to move around, God was able to protect me and help me. There was one time that I kind of got lost, like I didn't know what to do. And then I just took a taxi and then I was able to get to my destination safely. So, God is always blessing us and taking care of us. So anybody else that wants to give me an example of a trip they've been to and any way they saw God's blessing during this trip. So let me pick, what about Patricia?
I think maybe Cuba. We went there before it became more open. I think in 2004, and the people were so lovely. I mean, not to say that people aren't lovely everywhere, but it's the first time where I really saw oppression if you were a Christian, and that you were fearful of people spying on you and listening to you. And yet these people were brave enough to go to church and to do evangelism. And though they lived very humble lives compared to what I had seen in the States, in many ways, I thought they lived very rich lives because they were very strong spiritually, and despite their difficulties, they're able to find joy in their life. Okay, I'm going to ask Esther.
Thank you. So one trip that comes to mind, I've been on many trips, but I really liked going to Europe and going through all the historical sites of the Protestant Reformation. So we got to see where Martin Luther nailed the 98 Thesis. We got to see the Waldensians and all the different martyrs that died during the Protestant Reformation, and just how they were able to just completely surrender their lives to God during that time. So that was a real blessing. You really, those stories really came alive. So yeah, I will pick Bill.
Well, I take it I'm the only one, as you are the only Esther and one Veronica, one Patricia. One Mark, one Livius. That's interesting. One Nilda, it goes. This is probably not
One
what
spirit.
when one spirit, we're all drinking into the one
One
spirit.
God.
Thank you, Livius, for hearing from the cheap seats. This is probably not what you had in mind, but I lived a kind of not a life like many of you lived. I wasn't raised in a Christian household. My father died. My mother became a dipso, an alcoholic, and she had a lot of problems because of this. And she took me along for the ride. And my life was not a joy. And so when I turned about 15 or 16, I left her care as much as possible. And I started hanging out up at Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. And then a few years after that, I ended up getting into not just sales, but distribution and, well, smuggling of drugs and such. And at one point, but it was just out of control. And, you can have a lot of money, but it wasn't going to end up in a good place. So I ended up taking a trip with a friend of mine. And we went down to the coast of Spain, down to this little island called Fuerteventura. And it was basic. I mean, there were people there, they spoke their own dialect. It's supposedly the island where what was it? Odysseus and the singers, remember the women that would sing and people would jump off ships. Well, it was supposed to be on the cliffs of that island. Of course, there's a dozen islands that say that they're the place where that was. But in little houses that were hovels, and these people all were uneducated and raised goats. And I don't know how to express this, but it was probably the first time in my life that I felt connected to something outside of me and beyond me. And I don't know, it might have changed my life, but I recognized a pattern in it. I recognized a feeling and an experience in it. I related to this place with a sense of awe, I guess. And I'd taken lots of drugs and lots of other stuff, so I knew a little bit about awesome experiences. But this was different, and I think that was the first time in my life that it felt like life might be worth living on its own. And I don't know why, but it did. And it didn't change my life then, but got me refreshed and back in the game. I went back to where I was living. But I don't know, that to me was an awesome experience. And then now I'm 73, so that was, 50 some odd years before, but I never forgotten it. Okay, Livius, I see your big face right there online. Why don't you chime in?
Well, a couple of you have mentioned it before, but wherever I go, I used to travel a lot to Asia, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore. Everyone is just amazingly generous and amazingly welcoming and friendly, and just very relational. A lot of relational stuff happens outside of the United States. And people are just so super nice. And, I see God's character in that, hospitality and the kindness of people. It's just very cool. I love traveling. So how about Bong? We haven't seen him in a while.
I am here.
Bong, I have to ask you,
Yes.
where are you based out of? What station? The Potrero? Are you in the Potrero?
Yes, I am. Potrero.
Oh my goodness, buddy! I walk by there 3 days a week.
Well, what time? What day? What day? Every day?
We can chat later, but
Okay,
cool.
cool.
I'll look for your lovely face.
All right, cool. Anyway, I agree with Livius that whenever you travel, you see God's presence, you see God's blessings. One of them is the nature. And actually, we just got back from Hawaii, and the locals, even before I open my mouth to say hi or good morning, they would say mahalo, or this is the locals, not the people that are working at the stores, to sell you something, but these are the people from the streets.
Wow.
They give you a smile. The last time I was there 40 years ago, and it haven't changed. They're friendly. And I said, oh, God is really somewhere, and the Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit working to that person, you can feel it, even if they're strangers. And on our way back, from the moment we took off on the air all the way to San Francisco, it's a bumpy. It was, pilot says, they don't understand why this is bumpy. God's presence, God's blessings, the traveling mercies right there. And I just woke up from living room, traveling to bedroom. This is a blessing right here to be with you guys. And I thank you that I'm a part of this. Thank you very much. And I would call Pastor Mark.
Kids went already.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love trips. I love traveling. And one of my favorite memories of a trip was many years ago. I wanted to go to Alaska. So I went with my friend David, and we went to Alaska, and they dropped us off of a boat. They went in 20 miles, dropped us off in kayaks. And then we wanted to paddle up to this glacier, McBride Glacier. It was very foggy and raining, and we couldn't tell where we were. And we were finally like, you know what, let's just, there's a little beach here. Let's just go and make camp for the night. So we pulled our kayaks up, and I kind of walked up a little bit over the hill to see if I could find a level spot for camp that night. And right there was McBride Glacier. McBride Glacier is one of the most active glaciers in Alaska. It calves about every 4 minutes or so. And just sitting there looking at that, it was just like, wow, we made it. And while we were there for about a week, hiking and climbing and just playing around and just exploring, I just kept hearing this song in my head called I Can Only Imagine. I can only imagine what it's going to be like to be in heaven. And I often think back to that time, just coming off the kayak, just tired. We'd been paddling all day. We were wet. We were hungry. And just walking up to that berm and suddenly seeing the glacier right there, and suddenly being like, whoa, we made it. I didn't think we'd make it, but we made it. And I can just imagine when we get to heaven, it's going to be that ultimate journey where we're just kind of like, whoa, whoa, we made it. God did it. So yeah, that's a great memory I have. I'm going to ask Peter. I know, Peter, you're muted there. Do you feel comfortable unmuting yourself and telling us about one of your good trips you've been on?
I don't know. Let's see. So the question was about where we felt God's presence.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. On a trip where you felt God's presence.
I was in Syria, of all places, in 2006, and that was long before the Civil War started there. But I mean, you could tell that the government was pretty oppressive, but it's just the people were just so happy. It was funny. I went to a town called, what was it, Hama? Which is famous for a gigantic massacre that happened in 1982. But I've never been to a place where the people just seem so happy. Yeah, so that's my story.
Wow, thank you. Do you feel comfortable calling out somebody else?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So it has to be somebody who hasn't spoken yet. I guess I'll pick somebody else who's invisible. Alice is the first one I see here.
Okay. Yeah, I went a couple of weeks ago. I went to Utah and Zion and Grand Canyon. Like, it was amazing, the nature of God. I felt like, what a beautiful nature, what a beautiful nature that God gave us. I keep looking. I never stop thinking of God's beauty that he gave us here. It was just breathtaking. It was such a beautiful nature, and I felt God in there, that he gave that nature. I can imagine, like Pastor Mark said, how beautiful it's going to be heaven. Yeah.
Thank you, Alice. Do you want me to choose? Let's do one more person.
Yes.
Okay, I'll
Yes,
choose.
you choose some.
Okay. What about Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. I think for me, it was when I went to Bali. The nature was just the sound of nature, the nature itself, the animals. It was just very, very, very. God's presence was definitely there, and also in the people. They were very humble, very happy, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to live here. So definitely, I saw God's blessing in nature there for sure, and that's something that I constantly think about when I'm stressed out, that I want to be in Bali. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. It's nice to see that we're all experienced, also nice people, but we can also have that environment close to us. It'll be nice that when people come, they can also feel the same from us. All right, and then I'll go to Esther for the first song of tonight.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So the first song that Pastor Mark is going to play for us is called The Goodness of God. And I really like the lyrics to the song. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the song. And some of the lyrics goes, "In all my life, you've been faithful. You've been so good. In every breath I'm able, I will sing of the goodness of God." And I think, when we look back at our life, especially when we go to heaven, we'll see that just the goodness of God throughout our lives, from the beginning to the end. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Esther, for
Thank
picking
you.
that. I'm going to just connect us now to the YouTube.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good, yes. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And I love your voice. Oh, you have led me through the fire. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I will live in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. Yes, with every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. When my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. When my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. All my life. And all my life you have been so, so good. Yes, with every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
A lovely song.
Wow. Thank you so much, Esther. Good
Oh,
song.
yes. So good.
It was good. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, tonight we have a special presentation we've been looking forward to for quite a while. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Livius. Livius, as you know, has been part of our Friday night Bible study for, I don't know what, 2-3 years now, it seems like.
Yeah,
So
it's
Livius,
been a while.
the time is yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. Let me share my screen. Screen 2. And share. Okay. And want to make sure you want to stretch that screen as big as you can make it on your monitor, because I'm sharing a slideshow. I'm just trying to configure my side here. And so in September of this year, my wife and I went on a trip with the Loma Linda University Church. They put on I think they try to do it annually, but some trip to Holy Lands or something related with the Bible. 3 years ago, we went on a Holy Land tour through Israel and Egypt. And then the pandemic hit, and we were scheduled to go on this trip in 2020, but it got delayed till 2022. And so this trip, and they always bring archaeologists along, and it's always educational, and you feel like your brain hurts by the time you're done. For this trip, we had Dr. John Pauline, foremost Revelation expert. It's funny because he said that he says that he actually fell into the whole Revelation gig. Revelation is really not his favorite. He said his favorite. He says that his favorite subject is Paul, studying Paul. So, but he does an excellent job, regardless. So he was on our trip, and you'll see him in some slides and stuff. But yeah, so in September we flew to Istanbul, and the trip took part. It was the trip was divided into 3 parts. There was a pre-tour, a main tour, and a post-tour. And my wife Andrea and I did all 3. We actually traveled with a couple of friends, Jim and Karen Marksmiller. You'll see them here. If some of you went hiking with us up in the hills a while back, you might have met Jim. He was a biology teacher at Mountain View Academy. But we went with them, and we just had an awesome time. So the Bible in Asia Minor and the 7 churches of Revelation. John Pauline says, prophecy is given not to satisfy our curiosity about the future, but to teach us how to live today. That's a pretty awesome statement. So we landed in Istanbul, and this is a close-up of Istanbul. We our hotel was here, where I have this marked, and we got in a day early, and we walked around, went and saw some sights. What you're going to see is we traveled to the Galata Tower, which is located here. Then we went across this bridge. Down in here is where the Grand Bazaar is, the Spice Market. And then later on, the 2 big mosques, Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque, are located here. This little peninsula is the Constantinople Peninsula, what is known as Old Constantinople. Istanbul is on the other side. And this is the Golden Horn that goes in between the 2 of them. So this kind of just gives you an idea of where we're hanging out here for the initial start of the trip. This is the Galata Tower, and the Galata Tower was first built in 1348. It was the tallest building in Constantinople at that time, and it was used as a watchtower. It's kind of been taken care of and upgraded, but we took a tour up to the top. We walked up, we took an elevator to the top and walked down the stairs and took some photos. This is kind of what it looks like out of one of the windows, and you can see mosques all over the place. And what you'll see in this window here is 2 mosques in the background and a Christian church in the foreground there, the window. And these are the winding stairs that go down the tower. When you're up high, it's always interesting to look down and see what's down. So we kind of took some shots of patios and people's homes, just to kind of see, hey, this is kind of how they hang, what the roofs look like. So this is just a picture looking down at a couple of houses. Here's a picture of the 4 of us. And you can see the Constantinople Peninsula in the background with the Golden Horn dividing the 2. And you'll see mosques all over the place. The next picture, this is the direction of the photo that you're about to see. And we were at the tower looking in this direction. And you can see here the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque, where they're located. And here's where they are from that vantage point. The one on the left is the Hagia Sophia, and the one on the right is the Blue Mosque. And we visit those in a few days later. That's part of our trip. We didn't actually go do that on the pre-tour. So then we went to the Grand Bazaar. From the tower, we went to the Grand Bazaar, and it's a big covered shopping area. Lots of knickknacks and trinkets, and it's just cool to walk around, just kind of see what people are buying, what people are selling, just kind of check out the people. Crowd watching is always fun. Again, lots of people all over the place in these areas. This is not actually in the Grand Bazaar. This is on the way to the Grand Bazaar. When you get to the Grand Bazaar, it's kind of a covered building. So everything is under a roof. This is inside the Grand Bazaar. They have fountains. People actually come and wash their feet, wash their hands at these fountains. But there's all kinds of stuff to buy and purchase here. Beautiful decorations in the ceilings. And then this is the spice market. A lot of Turkish delight, a lot of teas. And here are some teas that you could buy. You can get a relaxed tea. Here's flu and cough. Here's a slimming tea if you're into that. A diabetic tea. So just some fun stuff. And so this is kind of what we did on our free day in the beginning, and we're going to get into the pre-tour now. And we had I want to just kind of give you some standard. This is what it always was, kind of standard things that we experienced. And the first one is the bus. This is kind of the bus scene. We always had a tour guide. There was a tour guide, and we had two buses, probably around maybe 40 people in each, 30 to 40 people in each. So there's always a tour guide. There's always a map. We were always chatting and talking as we were driving to our destinations. So this is kind of what the bus looked like. Number two is the food. I'm not much of a food picture taker, but Karen loves to take pictures of food, and this is kind of the scene of the food at the hotels. This happens to be a breakfast buffet, but you had all kinds of breads and pastries available, fresh squeezed juices, and cereals, cheese, all kinds of cheese, soft cheese, feta cheese, all kinds of cheese, and olives you see there on the left. Hot plates, hot meals, hot dishes, from rice to chicken to, we had a lot of vegetarian, so a lot of the places specially prepared, we had special prepared meals or sections for that had vegetarian options. In the background is a grill. You could actually customize an omelets, eggs, sometimes even pancakes and stuff, and crepes. Salad bar, of course, you can make your own salad, nuts, vegetables, and you can see the bread and juice bar in the back. And of course, there's always dessert. There's never you can never miss out on dessert. There's always something to eat. So our pre-tour, we got onto a plane. This is Friday, September 2. We got on a plane and flew from Istanbul to central Turkey. This area is called Cappadocia. And Paul in his writings in Acts 2:9 mentions Cappadocia as one group hearing the gospel account from Galileans in their own language on the day of Pentecost. Peter's letters, Peter 1:1, were addressed to Christians living in Cappadocia. Paul of Tarsus in Cilicia, an adjacent region just south of Cappadocia, is believed by some Bible scholars to have traveled widely through Cappadocia during his missionary journeys. And what was really cool that really struck me is that Paul and John the I don't know if at the same time, but it's just kind of interesting to note that Paul and John were in some of the same areas, traveling in some of the same areas. And Cappadocia is a region. It's a region in Turkey. There's no city called Cappadocia. It's just a region. We were told that the word Cappadocia refers to a region in Turkey, and it means horse, and many horse statues line the road. And you can see here on the right, this is kind of the terrain of Cappadocia. And Cappadocia, when we got off the plane, we had a short little stopover before we went to our hotel. And I'll tell you a little bit about that a little later. But the rock formations, and this is what's so cool about Cappadocia, the rock formations here emerged due to a geological process that began millions of years ago. Ancient volcanic eruptions blanketed the region in thick ash, which later solidified into a soft rock called tuff. When the natural forces of wind and water erosion did their work, and I want to submit to you that maybe a flood helped, only the harder elements were left behind to form what some people refer to as fairy chimneys that can be seen today, stretching as far as 130 feet into the sky. You can see a little bit of this on the image on the right, but there's all these carvings that you'll see as we travel through Cappadocia. Here's some more carvings, and you can see Jim here in a carved out chamber room with bookshelves and all kinds of seating and stuff in there. Here's kind of what you can just see these just carved out. They're kind of referred to as contemplation cells. They were dug out by monks. They would come in up here to meditate, but people have also lived in these areas, lived in these carvings. This looks like it's an abandoned gallery. I don't know what it is, but you'll see a lot of this as we go through. Here's an actual inside of one. You can just see how they picked at it and carved it out. And people actually lived in these areas. Fairy chimneys, you can kind of see where the fairy chimney label comes from. You can see this ash plume that is just harder from whatever the surrounding dirt that got washed away from is. And what you see here on the right is an actual fire pit. You can see the chimney coming up here. They burned the wood here, put the wood here, and had, places for pan, you can put a pan or whatever in here. But this is a fire pit, if you will. And of course, everywhere we went, every significant place we went, we got a little bit of a lecture. This is John Pauline talking to us about Paul and Cappadocia and what we're about to see. Driving to our hotel, again, here's more fairy chimneys. You can see these carvings, these carved out. And this is modern civilization that has been sprawled and built up and around these ancient dwellings. And people actually create rooms and extend their homes. And we actually stayed in a hotel that had carved out rooms. Just, it was an experiential thing. But they actually used these old carved out chimneys as part of their living quarters, and it's just interesting to see how it's all intertwined. This is called the Ukhisar Castle, and it's a huge complex of just all kinds of levels of these carved out rooms and homes and things. We will see. We drive by it on the way back into Istanbul from Cappadocia. Here's our hotel. It was a pretty nice hotel. This is after dinner, probably. We kind of ate dinner outside most of the time. It was nice and warm. But this hotel is carved into, the rooms are carved into, old old homes that were carved out before. And I think they took the liberty and carved their own rooms out of them. But this is our room. This is what our room looked like, and it's just basically carved out of this tough material. And they integrated all the amenities of a nice hotel in here. Kind of smelled a little like dirt in there, but it was kind of cool. So this is Sabbath, September 3. This is where we had breakfast, and you see John. After breakfast, we had a short church service in the patio here, and we traveled by bus to rock domes and carved structures. We walked through an amazing valley and visited surrounding region of Cappadocia, including Pasabog. This is a Monk's Valley. And after lunch, we stopped at a local restaurant. We visited the underground city Dyrrachiu. This was amazing. This underground city was carved down 8 levels into the rock as a place of protection from persecution. So this is what you'll be seeing. This is a huge complex here. And inside here, I don't know if you can see it very well, but where my mouse is pointing here, there was a huge stone mill that you can see here. All kinds of different rooms, stuff up top. There was a big church here in the center. More big platforms here, big rooms up in here, stairs all over the place. Here's more fairy chimneys, but also a close-up of some of the rooms and the carvings, and you can see that they have little footholds where they carve in footholds to get into higher levels. So just very cool. This was the restaurant we had lunch at. We took the whole place because there were so many of us. And here's us having lunch. This is kind of part of our group, and sipping some Turkish coffee with some dessert. After lunch, we visited an old Greek chapel. This is the inside of the chapel. A lot of soot from fires. People would come in here to stay warm, when it was not used as a chapel. And so there's a lot of damaged paintings. Even some of the art that was painted on the walls is starting to disappear, but it was a pretty cool chapel. Okay, next is the underground city. It's called Dyrrachiu, and this is kind of a graphic of the city. The community of monks used it as a refuge from Roman soldiers. We walked down 7 levels to a depth of approximately 100 feet. We actually walked down to here. So we started up here, walked all the way down, and there's this long, you'll see this long staircase, I don't know what you call it, but down into this level where it was an actual church. And it was kind of cool. It was carved into a cross, kind of. But we walked down about 100 feet. Cappadocia's rock valleys were an important site for early Christians because it was easy to carve churches and houses in the soft rock by hand. Christians chose this area to live and teach. From about the 7th to the 12th century, Christian people in Cappadocia were unsafe because armies from abroad mounted frequent military attacks. Christians found Cappadocia to be a safe haven. They built hundreds of underground cities to hide from their enemies. In some of the cities, you can go 7 or 8 levels underground. They all have churches, kitchens, food storages, living rooms, and natural air ventilation. It's estimated that at its peak, the population of the underground city grew to around 3,500 people. And you can see here all these vertical chimneys. This is all for ventilation that was dug. And it was just an amazing experience. And so here we go. We're looking up here at a ventilation shaft, but in some areas you have quite a lot of headroom. These are just some of the rooms as we are walking around, walking down. Just openings into chambers. You can see here they had some running water for vessels and stuff. Maybe this was a kitchen where they passed stuff back and forth. A lot of storage. You can see cubbies and things like that, maybe even where people slept. They stored food down here, even animals and goats and stuff, which is kind of amazing. You can see they probably had a fire pit here. What was cool is to protect themselves from soldiers coming down, they'd had these cool rollaway stones. What you see here is a stone, is a rolled stone that is in a little nook, and if they were being chased down, they would roll this stone and it would fall, as you see here on the left. It would fall, and there was no way to move this out of the way because they braced it on the other side. So it was quite secure. It was a really cool way to protect themselves from attacks. So here's that long stairway going down to the church, and I'm 6'1". This was like a 5-foot high stairwell. So I had to kind of crouch and make my way down, but just super narrow pathways. We're down here into the church, just more large rooms. And what you're going to see next is I decided to venture on a little further than 100 feet. And what I did is you see this little opening here. Off to the side here, there was this opening with this another tunnel, but it didn't have stairs. It was just kind of a smooth walk. I had to walk down crouched on my, I was kind of crouched down, hopping on my butt, if you will, if you can imagine that, just bouncing up and down, crouching through this tunnel, and I took a video of it. So I start at the bottom and I come up where everyone is up into the church. So here we go. Is there any sound? So you see, here's the church. And that's it. Did you guys get any sound with that?
No sound.
Okay. Well, I'm worried about the next video, because I got another video that I need sound for. All right, cool.
Just a quick question from Star. How did they get light down there? Was it all candles?
Yeah. Yeah, it had to be. There's no electricity. Also when you're down there, you kind of, I mean, if you've ever been in a dark place, you don't need much light to see okay, but yeah. Yeah, they had fires and they were cooking and stuff, so. Let's see. I'm going to play it again.
Look down in your bottom left. You'll see you're muted. So hover over your video again. See right there?
Oh, no, I'm not muted.
Yeah, hover over your video. Right there. There you go.
Yeah, there's not much to hear on sound in this one, so that's okay. Okay, thank you. That's good. There we go. Okay. All right, so that was the end of our city, of Underground City. The following morning, we did an awesome Yeah, it was muted. It was muted. September 4, we woke up super early, 4 a.m. And we had this hot air balloon experience. We actually took a hot air balloon to see the sunrise. And what was cool is we got to see the sunrise multiple times, because with a hot air balloon, you can go up and down. Here's us getting ready to take off. Here's the other group. These baskets held like 18 people, 18, 20 people in these hot air balloons. Let's see, yeah. They told us that there were approximately 140 balloons in the air during this balloon ride. And what was awesome is you can just see the topology of Cappadocia. You can see all the fairy chimneys and the erosion and stuff. This picture is divided into two. This is the bottom half of the picture to kind of show you see the terrain. And then here's the top half of the picture. Just an amazing experience. And then the sun barely kind of starting to peek up out, super high. It was just amazing, a hot air balloon experience. And from here, we went to a monastery. We also got another talk from Dr. John Pauline. Inside here on the right, we're standing in the galley of the monastery where they had shared meals and stuff. And you'll see more of the typical carvings of a galley here shortly. Some of the artistic paintings that you find in the ceilings and on the walls, a lot of cool patterns, and you'll see a lot of this in the mosaics later on. And again, this was so covered in soot. It's just hard to see any kind of artistry and artwork, but you can kind of get a taste of it here. Next, we went to an open air museum, and this area had a bunch of different communities. Multiple different communities lived in this area. And again, you can see the fairy chimneys, you can see the carvings, and they had different churches here and from different time periods, and you'll be able to see the artwork, how the artwork changed through these at these different churches. Again, just all kinds of carvings and churches and places to meet, and people lived. So this is the galley where they ate, where the monks ate. And you can see here on the left, the one on the right is basically very run down version of the one on the left. But basically they sat on the ridge here all the way around, and the center here was their table. And so they basically sat and ate around here at this table. Here is looking up at the ceiling of one of the churches. You can see the type of artwork that particularly was in this church, a very really detailed and shading, a lot of orientation. And here's another one from a different time period, different artwork. And then yet here's another one. This one actually depicts Alexander the Great slaying the great dragon. You can see this is Alexander here with a spear and the dragon underneath. And you find a lot of some of these paintings, you can see here, they scratch their eyeballs out. And because they think that spirits live in these figures and stuff, so they scratch their eyeballs out. So it's just a superstitious thing that they do. But some of the artwork is just beautiful. And it's located here. This is coming out of that city. It's really in a really close to a town. We had lunch that overlooked this whole area. And so you can kind of see, even here, you see there's a couple of pillars that kind of fell, and you can start to see some Roman influence into some of these carvings and the way they carve things out. But there's just huge structures that they carved homes out of. This is that Ukhisar Castle. Some people refer to it as the Flintstone House, but this is the back side of that castle. Just all kinds of multi-levels of these carvings and homes that you see here. From here, we traveled back to Istanbul. This kind of ends our Cappadocian excursion. And we traveled to Istanbul. We start our main tour here where more people join us, but we visited the Blue Mosque first and then the Hagia Sophia Mosque. We went to the Spice Bazaar with the group. Of course, we went on our own as well. We visited the Grand Bazaar and then we took a boat ride on the Bosphorus Strait. And in this picture, what you'll see is here's the Galata Tower I showed you in the very beginning. Here is the Hagia Sophia, and then here is the Blue Mosque. And so we visit the Blue Mosque first. This is the Blue Mosque. And it's blue because of the tiles that they use inside the mosque. And I'll show you those. That's why it's called the Blue Mosque. Here is the altar in the mosque. A lot of gold inlays and stuff. Here's the dome, the ceiling of the mosque. Such a lot of beautiful patterns and decoration. Some of the stained glass up at the top of the dome. And this is the tile that it's known for. This is the tile that is all over the mosque, and why it's called the Blue Mosque. I believe these are tulips. Some beautiful stained glass windows inside the mosque. And I just love the patterns and the shapes and the simple shapes that they have is just so stunning. Okay, next we went basically across the courtyard to the Hagia Sophia. And the Hagia Sophia was formerly called the Church of the Holy Wisdom. It was originally built by the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian I as the Christian Cathedral of Constantinople for the State Church of the Roman Empire between 532 and 537 AD. It was converted to a mosque after the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire in 1453. And it was an amazing building. Here's back side of the mosque. And there's cats all over the place. Turkey has lots of cats. And these aren't the last cats you'll see. As you enter the mosque, Hagia Sophia, they have this mural, this mosaic of Mary and Jesus. And what's fascinating is they have all this stuff covered up. Above here, they actually, they had a shade that they actually roll up when they have services just to hide them. Inside the entranceway, entry hall, this is where you take your shoes off before you go into the mosque. You can see some of the awesome decoration. Look at these marble inlays. You can see how this one is beautifully cut and it matches the one on the left here. You can see a matching pattern on that. Just beautiful construction, marble construction. A lot of carvings and it's just ornate, insanely ornate stuff. There are two pictures here just to kind of help you see the size of this thing. It's just incredible, the size of this mosque. All kinds of decoration. That's Andrea and me. A lot of chandeliers hanging from the mosque. And this is, there's two pictures. This is one picture. The next one is looking up. Pay attention to these 3-star ball here. As you look up, whoops, as you look up, it goes even higher. It's just incredible, the grandeur. And notice you see these, there's 4 angels in 4 corners. Interesting, 4 angels standing at the 4 corners. But their faces are covered up. Again, you know, they have them covered up. but they had one that was exposed, and it was really cool. Here's an exposed angel's face. And again, this is a mosaic, which is just incredible. Here's the altar. And people were just ignoring tourists and just doing their own thing, going to prayer. Just some decoration inside the mosque, just mosaics, inlays all over the place. You can see how run down in some places is, but just the artwork and the decoration is just so cool. Patterns in the ceiling. Whoops. And then here's a carving. Okay, this is a call to prayer. When we exited, we happened to exit the Hagia Sophia and came upon this call to prayer. All right. Next, our boat tour on the Bosphorus Straits. And the Bosphorus Straits separates basically Europe and Asia, which is pretty cool. But you can see here, this is kind of the path we took. And if you're using Google Maps on your phone, I don't know if you know this or not, but Google Maps will keep track of where you walk, where you go, and you can actually get a pretty cool visual of the day's events. And this is kind of where our boat took us on the Bosphorus Straits. And I'm going to show you some snapshots of some cool things that we saw going up the straits. Here you see on the right the Galata Tower. I don't know what some of these buildings are. There was a lot of like Europeans came out, and there's a lot of really expensive housing here too. Some had vacation homes. A lot of Europeans came, princes and, you know, the rich of Europe came and built homes and palaces here and stuff. And this is just one of them, right on the water. Some of these homes are, you know, several $1 million homes today. And they're also intertwined with old architectural, you know, fortifications and things like that. But these homes aren't cheap here. But it's just kind of cool to see. Here's a bridge we went under. This was a cool shot. You can see here, this is a huge mosque, and it was built by Erdogan. It's his, I think this is in the section of where he lives or something. He built this grand mosque. And you see here down on the right with these two towers, this used to be an old military academy on the waterfront here. It's turned into a museum now. But again, these homes on the water, really nice and really expensive. And here we're waiting for our bus to get back to the hotel. This is the end of our excursion on the Bosphorus Straits. The next day, September 7, we toured Topkapi Palace. And it's really on the back, really close to Hagia Sophia. You'll see the Hagia Sophia in the courtyard. The residence, it was the residence of the Ottoman sultans who reigned over the world for 4 centuries, from the 15th to the 19th century. We were captivated by the mysterious harem chambers, which you'll see. Next, we visited the Istanbul Archaeology Museum, highlighting the Hellenistic masterpieces of art. We saw the sarcophagus of Alexander the Great. And let's see what else. Yeah, the tablet of the first treaty. Okay. We also visited the basilica. There's a huge cistern under the city in Istanbul that was built by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian. So the palace, these are kind of the palace grounds, and you can see the backside, one side of the Hagia Sophia Church there on the left. It was a really pretty area. Under the porch is just, everything is just so ornately decorated here. And it's incredible decorations as you go inside. Here it is inside, just all kinds of tile work and gold inlays. It was just incredible. It's better when you're there in person. But just unbelievable. And a lot of tile work. We're starting to get into some of the rooms. This is a fireplace here on the left. And this is just some of the tile work that's on. These are all hand painted tiles. This is a bathroom, a bath chamber. Water would come pouring down and trickle down here and then down into the tub. There's sinks here on the left and on the right. This is for the ladies of the Sultan. Now, something really cool is they had skylights back then. Let me see that. Hold on a second. They had skylights back then that they poured out of glass, and it was just, sorry, where am I going? Just incredible to see how much light gets in here just from these skylights. It was so cool. They just cast glass and they sealed it around. It was amazing. And then walking through the palace, you know, look at all the tile work, all kinds of tile work, different pathways. Some more tile, different kinds of tile. This was a statue of a palace eunuch. These are harem's quarters, kind of a courtyard. Now this is cool. This is the royal throne chamber. Notice that the throne is a couch. And I want to take your mind back to Revelation 3:21. The one who conquers, I will grant him to sit with me on my throne, as I also conquered and sat down with my Father on his throne. You know, the Sultan would have honored guests that he would invite to sit, like not a co-regent, but to sit with him on his throne. So it's kind of cool to see that the throne is a couch. It wasn't a singular, just for one person. More views of the palace, of the throne room, the chamber, just incredible gold inlays and carvings and some woodwork, ivory. These are all ivory doors outside the palace. And then next we're going to go into the museum. This is the sarcophagus of Alexander the Great. It was really quite beautiful. All kinds of statues carved in here, like a frisee almost. Just beautifully decorated all around. This is actually Alexander here on the horse. You can see that because he has a lion's head on top of his head. You can see the head of a lion. This next piece, we were led into a non-public part of the museum this stone is the stone that they've discovered from the temple in Jerusalem. And the inscription on this stone is written in Greek, and it says, this inscription reads, "No intruder is allowed in the courtyard and within the walls surrounding the temple. Whoever enters will invite death for himself." So this was quite something to see there from the Temple of Jerusalem. Next is the big cistern, this huge, this might look familiar to you. They actually filmed a 007, a James Bond movie in here several years back, but that was pretty cool. And of course, there's always corn and chestnuts. There's always these chestnut and corn vendors all over the place. The chestnuts were actually pretty good. So from Istanbul, we departed on route on bus to Iznik, and this is where the ancient Hagia Sophia Little Mosque, it's a sister mosque, it's a little mosque, was and is located. And in the 4th century, 325 AD, this is where the Nicene Council met and established the Nicene Creed at this location. And from here, we visited Bursa, where we've also visited our great masterpiece of early Ottoman Turkish architecture, the Grand Mosque. But this is the inside of the Hagia Sophia Little Mosque. And of course, we had another lecture by Dr. Pauline. And then here we are in Bursa at the Grand Mosque in Bursa. Pretty cool. Just the change in artwork and decoration. Very simple writing. They actually had a fountain in the middle of this mosque. Okay, so from here, we start going and visiting the 7 churches of Revelation. And this is kind of a good map to talk about. You know, we started in Istanbul. Here is Izmit. This is where the Hagia Sophia Little Mosque, mosque is. Then we drove down to Bursa. This was the Grand Mosque that you just saw in Bursa. And from Bursa, we went down into Izmir here. And then from Izmir, we branched out to see the 7 churches. We skipped over the church of Smyrna because there's not much to see there. And you'll see it looked very similar to Thyatira. But from here, we visited the 7 churches of Revelation. This is where, I already showed you where Cappadocia was, but this is where we are. So our first church is Thyatira. And Thyatira, there's not much in Thyatira. You can see the city around it, but there's just some columns here. And if you'll notice, you'll see in some of the structures, you see how there's this white, smooth white rock. This is to indicate that this is not the real stone that was there. It's just been filled in. So whenever you see these white patches of rock and plaster, these have been filled in here. So you kind of get the idea of what it looked like. But this is Thyatira, and you see there's nothing left but basically barely a foundation of the church in the background. Yep. This was the groundskeeper. Again, inside the church. We're inside the church here. And of course, we had a talk. We sat on some of the stones. We had another talk. Randy Roberts is in the background here with Dr. Pauline. Some of the remnants of the church. The next church we visited is Pergamon, and this was a cool church. This was one of the highlights of the trip. Several churches were really awesome to see. This was one of them. Now, Pergamon was the site of many temples to pagan gods. Yet Christianity took a stronghold here as early as the 2nd century. The Pergamum Library was the second richest library of the ancient world after the library in Alexandria, Egypt. And the city of Pergamum was also where parchment paper was invented. We also were able to see the hospital site of Pergamum, named the Asclepion. And the Asclepion was among the 3 most famed hospitals of the ancient world. Modeled after the Acropolis of Athens, this hill was home to Pergamum's most important religious and administrative structures. The hilltop also served as a residence for the ruling elite, where those of a slightly lower status lived along the middle. Okay, and the way we got there was by cable car. And you can kind of just get a perspective of how high it is. We're walking, we're uptown, we're walking towards some of the temples and things like that, and you can kind of see down, ruins. Here we are looking at a plateau. We're nearby the great altar of Zeus, which I'll show you in a second. But this was the temple of Athena and his Zeus's daughter. You see several ladies are taking refuge in the shade of a tree. A walkway up to some of the structures, and you can see how high it is. It was practically a cliff coming down. Here is an amphitheater that was built on the side here, side of this mound. And we get to the great altar. This is really cool. This is kind of a map of the area. We entered from this area. The cable car drops you up in here, and we walked up through here, uptown, up down in here, the Trajan Temple, and up in here. And you saw the amphitheater here. And then this is where the great altar is. And the great altar sat here where you see that, where I have this highlight here on this mound. And look how close it is to the edge. And this was referred to as the great altar of Zeus. The altar was commissioned around 180 BC by King Eumenes II in commemoration of Pergamon's military victories. Appropriately, many of the scenes depicted the Olympians' victory over the Titans. The friezes are among the most famous of the ancient world. Even centuries during Roman times, the altar was hailed as one of the world's greatest masterpieces. In the 19th century, a German engineer and archaeologist named Karl Hamann was touring the Acropolis when he happened to discover one piece of the altar frieze. Highly impressed, he was determined to come back and find more. The altar had already been dismantled during Byzantine times, as the Christian Byzantines had little interest in preserving pagan art. No matter how impeccable the artwork, they used the marble carvings as part of a new fortification wall instead. The carvings facing inward, with the flat backs of the marble facing outward, which is why they went undetected for so long. Hamann and his team then spent 7 months excavating friezes, purchasing them from the Ottomans, a close German ally. He then sent them to Berlin, where they remain to this day. So this entire altar is in a Pergamon museum in Berlin. In Germany, the friezes were pieced together and placed along a full-scale recreation of the original altar, and an entire museum was built to house it. Known simply as the Pergamon Museum, it remains a major attraction on Berlin's Museum Island. But today, many in Turkey want Germany to return the altar to Bergamo. The Germans, however, claim that not only was it legally purchased, but local villagers had been burning vast quantities of marble to create lime. Had Hamann not sent everything to Germany, the altar of Zeus might have been lost for good. And here's what's cool about this altar from our perspective. This dramatic series of events isn't the only thing the altar of Zeus is known for. In the book of Revelation, there's a quote mentioning the seat of Satan himself as being located in Pergamon. And some scholars believe it was a reference to this altar, this great altar of Zeus. And you can see here from this picture, it kind of looks like a seat, like a chair, like a seat. And you can see that it's hanging on this cliff. And you can see the city down below, and everyone can see this altar from up high. And you'll see some photos of this location. Take a note of these trees. You'll be able to see these trees later on. Here's where the altar sat, and you can see the perspective of the city that's down this Acropolis high up. Just some of the not underground, but just some pathways through this complex. Here, we're at a huge complex, it takes up a large portion of the hilltop. This was built for the imperial cult of the Roman Emperor Trajan, initially constructed during his reign. There's an altar there you see at the lower right. As was common in those times, the temple was duly dedicated to both emperor and god, and in this case, Zeus. Again, here's what's some left of the columns. And of course, John Pauline is always lecturing us on this location. Some of the capitals and the top of what is left of the temple. And here's a selfie with myself and Dr. Pauline. On the back side of this area is this wall. This wall here that you see is from the Hellenistic period, and it's 300 BC, 300 years before Christ, this wall was built. Now, we went down the mountain, down this area, and we are going to the Asclepion, the medical facility that was below. And you'll notice this is looking up to this here. This is where the temple here is that you just saw. And here is where the great altar was sitting. And you can see how you can see it from this vantage point. Remember those trees up there on that mound. Here's the amphitheater that you saw earlier facing down the mountain. And you can just see it from down below. Walking down the main lane as we're walking into the Asclepion. Pillars on the right, and they had all kinds of shops and things on to the left and to the right, but this is a main road. And then again, looking back up at the other end, you can just see everything. Again, that's where the great altar was. And this is inside. They also had a little amphitheater. These are just the grounds of the medical facility. Some passageways. These were patient rooms here on the right. And there was an insignia here. There's a Latin inscription saying, "No death shall enter here," placed at the entry of this hospital. Again, the feline in Turkey. All right, the next church we come to the following day is Sardis. And this is Sabbath, September 10. We took a morning drive to Sardis, the capital city of the Lydian kingdom. Sardis was one of the rich metropolises of Asia Minor, with crowded populations of Jews, which might have enabled the good news to be heard at a faster rate than in other areas. This site is presently under the excavation of Harvard and Berkeley universities. Sardis was where the richest man on earth, King Croesus, enjoyed incredible power and wealth. We visited one of the oldest synagogues of the world that was later converted into a church. And then we visited the monumental Artemis Temple and the impressively restored Roman Imperial Hall. I'm not showing you slides of this because it's just a bunch of columns. We had a short visit at ancient Philadelphia. to see the remaining walls of a monumental church. Again, not much there in Philadelphia, but Sardis. When you come into the compound, the church there is in the background, but we come up alongside of a bunch of shops. There's all kinds of shops and things of different artisans doing stuff. This was a latrine, this restrooms, you can just imagine there. This was the sign back there says this was a paint shop that had a bin of water there in the corner. Just another shop with some stairs. And again, all these are just different storefronts up alongside the synagogue. As we walk in there, the synagogue there is on your left, covered. This is the courtyard and entrance to the synagogue. Lot of beautiful mosaics that were inlaid. And of course, we had a little Sabbath worship service. Some of the tile mosaics that were on the floor. Just beautiful work. And there was actually a team doing some restoration work on some of the flooring stuff that we saw. Some more beautiful tile work, beautiful mosaics. And then this is all marble into the walls and covered. And our worship service. We had behind here was an impressively restored Roman Imperial Hall. You walked out, passed through the church. It was a pretty big facility. And it was just amazing, just the pristineness of this Roman hall, Corinthian capitals, and just beautiful carved marble stuff. Next, we go to Philadelphia. And this is all that's left of Philadelphia is just these pillars. You can imagine how big this church was. This is just one of the pillars, and you can see the arch is just starting to go up. But there really wasn't much there to see. This is basically it, and this slide. Next, from Philadelphia, we go to one of my favorite churches, and this is the Church of Laodicea. September 11, we went to Laodicea, the lukewarm church. And this is going to be really cool. I hope it's as cool. I hope you think it's as cool as I thought it was cool, but it's better to be there. But you'll see what I'm talking about here is the lukewarm church. Turkish excavations on the site reveal walls of what might have been a monumental church. And this was a huge compound, huge area where this church is located. In the far distance, you can see Pamukkale. Pamukkale is a town in Western Turkey known for their mineral-rich thermal waters. This is where Laodicea got its water, and where it was why it was labeled the lukewarm church, because by the time the water got up here, it wasn't hot, it was lukewarm. If you look at this picture, I am inside the church. This is the inside of the wall of the church. You can see in the midground just more buildings and temples and part of the structure. And then in behind is where the Pamukkale hot springs are, thermal springs are, back down here. And more on that later. We are walking down some of the roads of this compound of the city, and the church is actually located here. This is where the church is. So it was just a huge place, all kinds of columns that were in restoration and just excavation, and this was a temple to somebody. Entering the church, it was really pretty too. A lot of awesome mosaics. on the floor. And what's cool is you can see the piping and the plumbing that went into the structure. You can see here in the middle some pipes and stuff like that. We got a lecture from Dr. Pauline, but you can see different time periods here. You can see a floor from a previous church that was built, because they basically reused everything. They just built things on top of things, on top of what came before. And you can see a previous floor from a previous time period from a previous church. And you can just kind of see how things evolve and change. Here's some of the mosaics. Another perspective. And what's cool here is in this breakout, you can see a broken pipe. This was the church podium, the center of the church. And to the left of here is a baptistry. This is a baptistry. You walk down steps into this little tiny baptistry. And then again, you can see the plumbing into this church where they had the water running. That was really cool. The piping was here on the left and the right. Okay, so here's the layout of the thermal springs. So in the background, you can see the springs, and you can see how the springs are just a little higher than where we are. So that water was able to come all the way down. And you can see here in this map, it started up here on the hot springs and came all the way down here to Laodicea, a 6-mile journey. It's approximately 6 miles from the hot springs down to, you see here in the foreground. It was just incredible. And look for this white cropping, which you'll see a little later in some of these next pictures, because it was just so cool to see how this all worked out in the description we have there in Revelation chapter 3. Again, we're walking through the rest of the facility. You see the white cropping in there. They had an amphitheater. Again, you can see that. And then now we also visited the hot springs, the thermal springs. And the thermal springs have this travertine calcium carbonate from the mineral water that comes out. And it just makes this beautiful. We walked through the water and stuff, and they have places where you can take your shoes off and walk through the water, but it was just so pretty. All right, so next is Ephesus. Ephesus was pretty cool as well. The first visit was to the archaeological site of the ancient Ephesus. Paul came to Ephesus in 54 AD and stayed for 3 years here. He preached the gospel, gained followers, and established the church of Ephesus. John, author of the Revelator, also spent his last 3 years in Ephesus. John is believed to have been buried within the Basilica of St. John in Ephesus, and we'll see this a little later. But this is Ephesus, and basically we walked kind of down here. We started here on the right, walked through this long, narrow road, which you'll see, down here to the middle where what was it called? I'll just see it later. Okay, a little pre-adventure lecture before we start, and of course we have a companion with us. This was a small amphitheater, small theater is on our way there. This is kind of the beginning. We have on the left is what's left of the Temple of Artemis. And on the right is a monument to Gaius Memmius on the right, which was kind of cool. He was the great architect of the city who built the aqueduct of Ephesus. It was built in the 1st century BC, 30 to 50 AD. It stands out for its semicircular niches linked by arches with high reliefs of Memmius, his father and his grandfather Sulla. So that's kind of cool. Now this is that long road. And this road was lined with all kinds of niches of temples and vendors and things. One of them is the Nymphaeum Traiani, as a fountain building, was donated by Tiberius Claudius Aristion and his wife between AD 102 and 114 in honor of Artemis of Ephesus. So again, a shrine to Artemis, their god. And it's always someone taking a break. Continuing down, notice here on the left, there is this little walkway lined with tile. It was so cool, just preserved this little tile walkway. And this area here was probably covered. What you see here in the middle is not covered, it's just opened up to the sky. But on the left, on the right, it was a covered walkway. They had roofs and stuff. And if you look to the left, you just kind of see what's kind of cool. You just kind of see some steps, probably going up to some housings and apartments and, you know, where the rich lived and whatever, whatnot. It was cool. Now, there's also some graffiti in here. And amongst all these temples of all these pagan gods, the Christians had a presence. And what you see here is a Christian cross. And what does this look like? You might think it looks like a spider web, but it's kind of a secret thing, kind of a hidden thing. If you look at it correctly, you kind of see a cross. Depends on how you look at it. This is the Temple of Hadrian with a relief of Medusa above the arch. Some public latrines. What's cool about this is, you know, they had running water in here. And what you see here is after you did your business, not only was there running water down in here, but there was running water down this canal here and down in here where, you know, you had to clean yourself off. And so there was running water running all down through here. This is a relief of Nike. Nike was the winged goddess of victory. This is why the brand Nike has a wing of their logo. And athletes who wanted to win worshipped her. Pretty fascinating, huh? This is the Celsus Library. It was known as the third best library in the ancient world. It was built between 100 and 110 AD. It was a pretty awesome structure. This is kind of in front of there, getting up close, and then under the entranceway, just beautiful carvings, beautiful marble work. This is an artist's representation of what might have looked like inside. Continuing down, this is passing the Agora. This is like at the marketplace where people hung out and stuff. And there's more graffiti on here. And what was interesting about this graffiti, you know, Ephesus was a harbor, was a port town. It was a port city. They actually had the water actually came up all the way up close to Ephesus. And so a lot of sailors would come by, and what you see here is carved footsteps into the rock. And I don't know if you can see it, but what you see carved here, you can kind of see the outline of a bust here and a little figurehead here with ears and some adornment. This is a big, beautiful girl carved into this rock. And basically it says, for a good time, follow these footsteps. Next, we came into the huge theater that is in Ephesus, and it's quite significant. This theater, this is our group getting ready for a little lecture. But this theater is important because this is where you read in Acts 19:29, Acts chapter 19, verse 29. So the city was filled. This is where they had an argument about the craftsmen not being able to sell their idols of the great Artemis. The city was filled with confusion, and they rushed together into the theater. This is the theater that they rushed into, dragging with them Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians, who were Paul's companions in travel. This was the theater that they dragged him into. And someone's watching over the theater. Again, John the Revelator also spent his last years in Ephesus, and he is believed to have been buried in the Basilica of St. John in Ephesus. This is on the way there. Just view of the countryside and what it looks like there. This is the Basilica, and not much left but walls and pillars and columns. But as we go in, kind of what it looked like in the entrance. This center area is where it's believed that Paul is buried. At least that's what the carved in rock inlay says. This is a baptistry. What's cool about this baptistry, they have these tanks here. You see these tanks here on bottom and top here, and they look like they were like overflow tanks. So when two people got in here, they had to level the water, and the water kind of flowed into these. It was pretty cool just to see how they were constructed and built. And then from here, we went to a museum. And this is some of the things that were in the museum. I show this because there's nothing new under the sun. I'll just leave it at that. This is parts of Emperor Domitian. I think Domitian got a bad rap, and there's not much of him left over, but they found his head and his arm. And then next is Socrates, the head of Socrates. And the one on the right is in my honor. This is head of Empress Livia. This is the feminine name of my name, Livius. It's actually Liviu. Livia is the feminine version, which I thought was kind of interesting. Someone pointed it out to me, and well, I had to take a picture. All right, so now we are going into a ship adventure. We joined the Celestial Olympia cruise ship, and our first stop was the island of Patmos. It was on the island of Patmos that the Apostle John was exiled, and he received and wrote the book of Revelation. Short excursion, we went and saw the monastery of St. John. It's believed that there was a cave there that we don't have any pictures because they didn't allow you to take pictures of the cave, but there was a cave in there that we toured, supposedly is where he wrote some of his revelation. It was kind of cool, but the monastery is on the uppermost part of the island, which contains priceless icons and ancient artifacts, including an original painting of Jesus by the famous artist El Greco. But we'll see those. So we get on the ship, and here's kind of what's going to be happening here. This is kind of the adventures of the rest of the time. So we start here from Ephesus. We boarded the boat in Kushadasi, which is a beach resort down really close to Ephesus, where we ended our Revelation tour. Then we go to Patmos. This is where Patmos is. Then we went to Rhodes. Some of these weren't like, we had free days. Rhodes was just a free day. We went to Rhodes here. From Rhodes, we went to Crete. We didn't get off the boat here, so there's nothing to see. Some people did. They did have the boat had some short excursions of ruins in Crete, but we didn't get off the boat. From Crete, we went to Santorini. Santorini. This is kind of cool. We went to Santorini for a couple hours. And then from Santorini, we went straight to Athens. We had a short tour in Athens. And then the same day we got on a plane and went to Thessalonica. Thessaloniki is how they say it. And from Thessaloniki, we went to, how do I turn this off? Philippi. And from Philippi, then we came back to Athens and went to Corinth. And we end our tour. Our time together is ended in Corinth. So this is Patmos. This is a huge monastery castle up here in the top of Patmos. We are coming into the port in Patmos. This is up from that monastery up towards John's cave, but this is where the harbor looks like. This is the entrance to the monastery. Inside the monastery, just all kinds of beautiful murals. This is the sign that they had at the entrance of the cave of John, and then this is that famous icon where John receives his vision of Revelation. And there was a little small amphitheater where we had a lecture by Randy Roberts. And on our way back down to the boat, just some scenery of the sunrise, sunset. And we took a little detour and walked through the town of Patmos. This is just kind of through some shops. And from Patmos, we got on a boat and we went to Rhodes. When we woke up in the morning, we were in Rhodes. And we did a little self-guided tour of Rhodes, which was pretty cool. And I'm going to take you on a little walk through the city streets. This is going into the town. There was a church that had no roof, which was really cool. So this was inside of a church. That was just really cool to see, just what's left over. And then basically we just walked around the town just to kind of get an idea of what a typical day of walking around and doing your thing and going to the store, seeing shops, and just kind of get an idea for what it is like to live in Rhodes. And just some cool narrow streets and just old buildings. Just a lot of scooters all over the place. Not too many people around, which is kind of cool. This was a coffee roasting shop. A lot of coffee products, Turkish coffee implements and grinders and things. You know, grandma sitting on her porch with her cat and some clergy hanging out. This was inside of a monastery. More walking through the town. Then I came upon this and I started walking through these streets, and I said, oh my gosh, I've got to capture this whole experience. So what I did is I backed up and I took a video of me walking through these streets. So here's a video of walking through the streets of Rhodes. I kicked myself for not taking the camera and sticking it through the hole of that door. Airplane coming up over Bonn. there's a little kitty. It's just beautiful. And going back to the ship, walking through. This was a dumpster. Interesting things that you can find in a dumpster. I thought it was kind of cool. And yeah. And then we had lunch. Nice little restaurant. And back to the boat. Our next is going to Santorini. And Santorini was cool. We only spent a couple hours there. We basically walked the streets and had dinner there. But Santorini is in Greece. It was first settled by the Phoenicians in 1200 BC and became part of Greece in 1821. And what's cool about Santorini is the largest caldera of an underwater volcano, and the entire town is built on the ridge of the caldera. And here's the ridge of the caldera with the volcano plug in the center. But the entire town is built on the ridge of this caldera. And here is the ridge. As you walk in, as the ship goes into that port, into that center of that volcano, you can see here the town is up at the top. But you see, we landed with the boats down here, and there's these switchbacks that you can walk up on, or you can take a donkey. They give you a donkey ride up these switchbacks. We took the cable car. There's a cable car that goes up here along the side, but we took a cable car. And when you get to the top, the donkeys come up on the road, and so here's a donkey coming up, through the town up at the top to work their way back down. But this is kind of what it looks like up top. You can see how high you are. You can see a cruise ship in the background. And of course, we had dinner on a cliff view with a cliff view of the bay, the inside of the volcano. That is the center of the volcano there. And then the far is the other side of the caldera. And you can see our cruise ship is there in the upper right, next to Andrea. This is sunset, looking down, looking at the town. Then some more sunset pictures. That same sailboat leaving the harbor. And here we are back on the boat. This is the same switchbacks that we were up on, kind of what the city looks like at night. And then from there, we end up in Athens. Now in Athens, we got off the boat. We disembarked at 7:30 a.m. and we visited the Acropolis. We explored the Pantheon. We climbed Mars Hill, the Areopagus, where Paul spoke. And then the same day, we went to the airport and took a short flight to Thessaloniki, where our hotel was for the evening. So it was quite a busy day. And here we are arriving at the Acropolis. Walking up to the Acropolis, you see this is the Temple of Nike. This little cube here is Temple of Nike. This was our guide here hiding in there on the left, on the right-hand picture. Walking up the stairs, we basically go up the steps and we go around the Pantheon and come back around the other side and come out through the front again. So we go up the steps and just going through the entrance here, just these marble columns. It was just unbelievable. Again, you can see the white filled in architecture of what used to be there. Just the way they built it. Inside now, we're inside looking at the gate, at the entrance. We come back here, going around on the other side. Marble walls. There's the Pantheon. This was an amazing structure. Doing some work. And then all around the Pantheon is all kinds of broken pieces that they're trying to put together. You see here, there's part of the roof they're trying to assemble, but it's just a mess. Looking down the wall, you can see Athens. I mean, it was just such dense population that I've never seen such dense population. This is looking down. We came up from beyond that amphitheater. That's where the buses were down there. You can actually see the buses down here. This is where the buses, we walked up around and came up around through here. Turning left a little bit, same position. There's a small little amphitheater. Again, you can see some Athens in there. Andrea and I in front of the back side of the Pantheon. Pantheon or Parthenon, I'm not sure. It's one of those. And then we're walking around this plateau is another temple. Now you might think there's a lot of people here. Our guide said this is like nothing. This is so easy. This was so easy. Typically, this is just a sea of people, he said. We just got so lucky on this particular day. He said there's hardly anybody here. Coming back down, and then again, we're walking back down out. We're going out. Another vantage view of the Temple of Nike. Here we're looking on the opposite side. This is Mars Hill in the center. And again, Athens. This is the Areopagus area. Areopagus Hill is what it's called. This is the Temple of Hephaestus in the far distance. And this is Mars Hill. And down here by these steps was this Greek carving of Act 17. Act 17 down, and this is Mars Hill. And we walked up here on Mars Hill. You can see the Areopagus there. Some of Athens. So Paul, this is from Acts 17. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, this is where we're standing, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you." And I have to say, this was so cool to be able to, it's just an amazing thing to experience, you know, to be where Paul was, you know, to walk through all the temples and all the gods and all the things that they worshiped that are still visible today. And it's just unbelievable connection to scripture. And, you know, scripture, you know, the experience is one of the books that God has left for us to examine. Not only do we have his word, but we also have experience that we can add that adds to our understanding of scripture. And if you have an opportunity, don't miss it to go on a trip like this, where you can walk in some of these footsteps of some of the great witnesses of scripture. All right, so we are in Thessalonica, and we got on a plane and went to Thessalonica. This is kind of what it looks like. I think we're driving over here to Philippi, but Sabbath, we started with 1 hour drive from Thessaloniki to the ancient city of Philippi in Acts 16:12. This was also an awesome place to visit. We visited Lydia's spring, the place where Paul led Lydia to Christ. And Lydia was the first Christian convert in Europe. And from there, we continued to the archaeological excavations of this Roman city during the time of Paul. It is here that Paul and Silas were imprisoned in Acts 16, verses 11. So this is the little chapel that is by Lydia's spring, and we ducked our heads in there and took some pictures of what it looked like inside. But this is the spring. This is the spring where Lydia and her household were baptized by Paul. And we all got a chance to dip our feet in the water while we listened to an awesome rendition of Dr. Pauline. And what was so cool, I wish I would have recorded what he talked about. I just remember this was just an awesome presentation. And we had people, there was other people, other tours that are there with you at the same time. And we had this couple that kind of just came in and they just kind of sat with us. And they were just so enthralled. And then afterwards, they started talking and chatting with them and stuff. But just ability to witness, it's amazing how much we have. You don't think about it, but you're actually witnessing to others as you're on some of these trips. But it would just warm my heart to just see people sit and listen to him. He just had an awesome presentation. Just another, who knows where they were baptized, but this is just another part of the spring. It was just so refreshing to dip your feet in there and just hang out and listen. Then we ducked our heads into the chapel. The chapel was very ornately decorated. I mean, it was just incredible. A little baptismal altar in the middle. And this is kind of what it looks like in the ceiling and the roofs and stuff. Really cool murals. On the floor, they had a mosaic of Paul's missionary journey, just a little path where Paul went. This was kind of cool. And then this is a mosaic of Lydia. Here's Karen taking a picture with Lydia. Mosaic of Lydia. From the spring, we went to the city of Philippi. And the city was built by Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, in 358 BCE. And it was here that Paul preached his first sermon in Europe, and here the first believers were baptized. Well, this was a cool city because we go to supposedly where Paul was put in prison. As we walk into the compound and towards the city, there's some ruins, and this is part of a amphitheater. If you go to the right here, you'll walk into the amphitheater. Here's the amphitheater. And as we further down, we walk towards the city center. This is the Agora here as we approaching. Here's the Agora. The Agora is where they had vendors, it was all, the center area was all open air, but on the outskirts, they had all these pillars and covered walkway where the philosophers and whatnots would talk and chat, and people walk protected from under the sun. But this is the Agora. And here on the right-hand side, you see where this walk, come on. This area, this is where you read in Acts 16, starting in verse 19, but when her owners saw, remember this is where he casts out a demon from the woman, but when her owners saw that their hope of gain was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace. The marketplace was here on the left that you just saw, before the rulers. And when they had brought them to the magistrates, this is where the magistrates were located here on the right. They said, "These men are Jews and they're disturbing our city." And here is where the prison of St. Paul was. And you can see the magistrates is right behind the sign. You can see the start of that walkway up there, but it's right behind that sign where I just showed. This right here is right behind this sign. And when they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, ordering the jailer to keep them safely. Having received this order, he put them into the inner prison and fastened their feet in their stocks. I don't know if this is Paul's prison, but it could be. Next, what's so awesome here is this is the actual Roman road. This is Via Egnatia, part of the Via Egnatia. And this is the Roman road that connected Rome with Greece. And this is the very road that Paul walked on almost 2,000 years ago when he entered this city. I mean, I'm tearing up a little bit just as I'm telling you this. I don't know why, but it's just so, so cool. So we go back to Thessaloniki, and from there, this is just old city walls of Thessaloniki, and we're on our way to Berea. And in Berea is where Paul found a community of Jewish people, and we're at a synagogue here. As they listened to Paul, they examined the scriptures to see if it was true. We viewed the marble synagogue steps where Paul stood and preached. So this is supposedly where he stood and preached. They have a little mural here dedicated to him. And then on the right is him talking. There's a mural of him talking to the Bereans. We returned to the Thessalonica airport and boarded our 50-minute flight to Athens after this. So here we are. Randy's given us a little lecture in this spot. The mural of Paul on the left. This is him talking to the Bereans. And they actually had a statue of Paul in the courtyard. And of course, I had to take a selfie. From here, we are back in Athens, and in Athens, we end with a visit to Corinth. And this was our last day of the tour. And today was our last day, and we saw the Corinthian. We drove on a bus to Corinth. It was about an hour drive, I think. We crossed the Corinth Canal. This connects the Aegean and the Adriatic Seas, and it's just this narrow canal where boats come through. We visited the ancient city of Corinth, which was a major commercial crossroad in the time of the Apostle Paul. Paul spent 1.5 years as a missionary in this city. We also saw the Bema platform where Paul's case was dismissed by Roman proconsul Gallio in Acts 18:12. This was really cool as well, just to be able to be here where he was, and you'll see what I mean. This is walking into the compound, walking into the city, just walls outlining of the structure of city of Corinth. Courtyard here, maybe this is the Agora. Randy's giving us a little lecture before we walk around. And then here's the Bema. The Bema in ancient Greece, it was a raised platform where officials gave public addresses and heard legal cases. And what you see here is this special pillar. This is where Paul would have stood. He would have stood here hearing his case, and the Bema is actually up here. The officials would stay up here and hear their case and give, pronounce punishment or whatnot. So it was so cool to hang out here. I walked up, and this is standing on top of the Bema, looking down at the pillar, looking down at the plaintiff. This is where Paul would have been, looking at Paul. Here is that little pillar. This is where you stand to have your sentence meted. Paul would have stood on this very spot. And that was super cool. Here's another view of Corinth through some trees. And there's never a cat. More of Corinth. I don't know. There were some public restrooms in here, just different government facilities, buildings, offices, whatnot, just ruins of the old city. Just super cool to think of what, might have been here. Just so incredible. There happened to be a restaurant overlooking this area, and we had a meal here. We had lunch up at the top of this restaurant overlooking this city, the city of Corinth. We had a delicious meal with everyone. And that was the end of our tour. I'm going to leave you with this slide of Athens and the Acropolis in Athens. You see here it's sunset. And that's all she wrote. we actually stayed an extra 3-4 days in Athens, and we just toured a bunch of museums and just kind of chilled in Athens with Jim and Karen. But this is the end of the official tour. So I'm happy to take questions. I can go back to a slide if you want. But yeah, thanks for listening. And wow, we did awesome. 1 hour exactly.
Mhm.
I got a couple of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
First off, from near the beginning, that underground area, when you were down far below, and it looked like
Yes.
there was even, there was water down below, and
Yes.
a couple of things. Did you feel that immense pressure of the rock all around you and over you?
Well, I'm not claustrophobic.
Well, I don't mean that, just that, just
There
as
is
a-
no, yeah, there is an atmospheric pressure that you feel when you go down. Yes.
just
Yeah.
I've always that or near glaciers and things, you can feel this kind. To me, it is kind of an immensity of it. To
Yeah.
just and also, did you visit any of the quarries that these a lot
No,
of these sites
no.
or cathedrals or walls
No.
were quarried out of? I remember visiting some of them. They'd be miles away, and even
Yeah.
before iron tools, they used like tin and bronze, and they had very crude ways of cutting the rocks out and the marble and the rest. And then they had slaves that very crudely brought it to where, and these were millions of stones and pieces. To me, it was an incredible achievement for humanity to do these things, or to dig all that ground out of those original cave dwellings. And
Yeah,
stuff.
it was
Just
cool. It was totally.
yeah.
But
What
yeah,
a
no, we didn't-
marvelous tour! What a marvelous
yeah.
tour!
I have a comment. I went to Istanbul and I went to Blue Mosque and I went everywhere except I just went to Ephesus. I didn't go where the other places.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. In Istanbul, still when you use the bathroom, you have to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
still the same.
Istanbul, I
Yeah.
recommend any trip to Turkey was fantastic. The food was incredible, and
Yeah.
just people are not, I mean, it was just a awesome place to visit. Istanbul was highly recommended.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
How much did the tour cost?
Oh, and it wasn't cheap.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was up to like 5,000 or 6,000.
Yeah, twice that.
Oh my goodness.
Well, there's 2 of us. That was per person.
It's still ouch.
Yeah, it is. But the food makes up for it.
Mhm.
They stayed at excellent hotels. Everything was bussed for you. So all your luggage, all you had to, your luggage ended up in your hotel room. It was loaded onto the bus for you. That is a huge, I mean, I can't tell you what a convenience that is when you're on a tour like this. This really wasn't a vacation. This was like a pilgrimage or something, because everything was just go, and you're looking at these places, and you got to be on time, you got to be in the tours, and so it was really an experience. It was like an educational, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was just, yeah.
Summer school.
Yeah.
Well, I have to thank you for this, because for those of us who will never be able to do this, you've actually taken us on a tour, and I know all of us
I love to do it. My pleasure. Thank you so much. And you know what? We had a camera crew with us, and so they are putting together some kind of a video for the people that were on the trip. And so when that comes out, I'll share that video as well. And it's something that they have produced on their side. That might be interesting as well. I'd be happy to share that as well.
Hi, Livia. This is Sharon. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was fabulous.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can you share a website where we can look at the tour in depth and any other tours they have?
Yeah. So let me see. Share screen. Screen to share. And if I can go. How do I hide this thing? I don't know how to hide it. But let's just go.
I think Peter put the link in the chat.
Did he? So it's let me look at the chat. Where's the chat?
Okay. Loma Linda University.
Yeah, you said it was Loma Linda, so I looked it up, and it seems to match what you're.
Oh yeah, thank you
writing.
so much. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So here's the trip. Bullet trips. So the Land of the Bible tour, the Bible in Asia. This is the one we were on, and then they also did an earlier one to Israel and Egypt. I think this might have already been gone, but you see Randy Roberts and Dr. Larry Garrity. He's an archaeologist at the La Sierra University. He was phenomenal too. We went on, this is the trip we went on 3 years ago with him, and it was just incredible. But yeah, thanks for posting that into the chat.
Thank you.
And they're not the only ones. You might want to just Google search Holy Land tours, or maybe reach out. There are several churches that are doing stuff. David Asherick is even doing a tour too. So just be a lookout. I don't know if all kinds of churches do these tours.
Well, thank you so much, Livius. And a lot of work you put into this presentation tonight. I like the way you gave us maps. You gave us little highlights, little arrows. So thank you. And it wasn't an hour, it was 2 hours. And that's a reflection of your good presentation. The time just flew by.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn the time over to Esther, and she's going to have our music for us.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. So this next song is called Our God, Our Help in Ages Past. And I really like the song. It talks about the sovereignty of God. And not only is he our help in ages past, but present and future as well.
All right. Thank you, Esther. This is actually a really old hymn, and I just love the words of this song. So I'll go ahead and share that with us now.
Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. Under the shadow of thy throne, still may we dwell secure. Sufficient is thine arm alone, and our defense is sure. O God, our help in ages past. Before the hills in order stood, or earth received her frame, From everlasting thou art God, to endless years the same. 1,000 ages in thy sight are like an evening gone, short as the watch that ends the night before the rising sun. O God, our help in ages past. God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Be thou our guide while life shall last, and our eternal home. O God, our help in ages past.
All right, thank you. It was written in 1719 by Isaac
Wow.
Watts. Beautiful song, isn't it?
Wow, I didn't know it was that old. Yeah, I really like the lyrics to the song.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. All right, Marina is going to have our closing prayer for us. Marina.
All right, we're going to bow down. So I will start. So, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for give Livius the bless to give us the tour from Paul Footstep. And I'm pray and thank you for a bless for each one of us on the group of prayer. And the Heavenly Father, I ask for help us to evangelize and preach the gospel for better word until Jesus' second coming. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Marina. And you have a special thing coming up in 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Marina is going to be getting baptized, not this Sabbath, but the next Sabbath. So we'd love everybody to come and join us for that there at San Francisco Central. There's a lot more people getting baptized as well. But Marina, thank you so much for using your talents tonight and just joining us. And Livius, thank you again. I was really blessed. Patricia was telling me, we got to go over there. So it's just neat to be able to walk in his footsteps.
Livius didn't take us, but I'm pretty sure Pastor Mark will take us.
Yeah.
No. Livius took us tonight. He's a good guy.
Thank you, Livius.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, Livius. Hi, Nilda.
Hi. Thank you, Livius.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
good night, everybody. Happy Sabbath.
Good night.
Night.
Happy Sabbath.
Sabbath.
Talk to you soon, Livius.